Hello and welcome to the channel. I am here for a ranking video for you guys. Now for this ranking video, I'll be ranking the 3 Days Grace discography. Now I've realized that I haven't reviewed this band's discography yet, so I figured why not do it. Now 3 Days Grace is a band that I've been a fan of since 2012 or 2013. It was either one of those years. I just remember it was around that time. Now, 3 Days Grace is not, one of my favorite bands in modern rock, of course. I personally just don't think they're as good as bands like, say, Breaking Benjamin or Red, even. But, yeah, I still think 3 Days Grace is a good band. I especially really like the stuff with Adam on vocals, of course. So, we're going to rank the 3 Days Grace discography from worst to best. They have currently 6 studio albums, and we'll most likely get another album from them in 2021. I don't know, I could be wrong, but we'll see, of course. But yeah, so we're going to begin with what I think is the weakest, and that is Transit of Venus. Now, I know some people might disagree with my placing for this album, but to me, this is the weakest album with Adam on vocals, of course, and it's, in my opinion, the weakest 3 Days Grace record. This album's biggest problem is just it doesn't have much memorable tracks on this album. There's not really much I remember from this album, and that's pretty sad. I mean, this album does have some good stuff on it. I mean, Chalk Outline, that's a good song. But yeah, for the most part, this album is just very forgettable, and I mean, I think it's the weakest with Adam. So next up, we got Human, which was the first album with Matt Walst, and this is a decent album. This album does have its problems. This album also kind of falls into that forgettable, kind of like lacking memorable tracks kind of category, I guess. But this album does have some memorable tracks on it. Some great songs, I think, like Painkiller. That's a good song, very catchy. Fallen Angel, definitely one of the best on this album. Nothing's Fair in Love and War, maybe my favorite song on the album. I just think that this is one of the best 3 Days Grace songs with Matt on vocals. I really dig this song for some reason. It's just really good. But yeah, Human, not one of their best, but I think it's a decent album. And then we got Outsider, which is their most recent album. And this is, of course, the second album with Matt. I feel like they've really improved upon Human with this album. I think that this album is just a little bit better than Human. I think it's more ambitious, I guess. I guess that would be the best way to describe this album in comparison to Human. This album does have some lyrics that are kind of like, kind of unoriginal, kind of uncreative. There's just some moments in this album that feel kind of underwhelming as well, but I still think it's a decent album as well. I like Right, Left, Wrong. The Mountain is a song that's kind of grown on me a little bit. Infrared, I dig this song, definitely one of the best tracks on the album. Yeah, so this album does have some good stuff on it, but it's not one of their best either. So yeah, Outsider, it's a decent album. Okay, so next up, we got the self-titled debut, 3 Days Grace, and now, I think this album is slightly underrated. Not too underrated, but just slightly, I think. I think that this is a really good debut album. Not one of the best debut albums of all time or anything, but I do like it. I think it's a very good album. This album does have some great songs like Just Like You, I Hate Everything About You, Home, what else? I think Wake Up is a pretty underrated song. But yeah, this album definitely has some good stuff on it. It's not their best work, but I think it's a really good album. So next up, we got Life Starts Now. Now, this album, I pretty much liked it ever since first listen. I was actually kind of blown away when I heard this album. It was actually better than I expected, honestly, whenever I did listen to it, of course. But yeah, definitely a really solid album for sure. Definitely a great album. This album has many great songs like Break, Lost in You, World So Cold, No More, which I think is underrated. Someone Who Cares, I think it's called. I like that song too. Yeah, this album definitely has a lot of great material on it. There's just a lot to like about this album, and it's my second favorite 3 Days Grace album. So at number 1, you guys probably know at this point what number 1 is for me, and that is Onex. This album, I think, is one of the best hard rock albums of the 2000s. This album is just really solid. There's only really a couple tracks on here that I think are rather skippable, mainly songs in the middle parts of the album, but most of the tracks on here, really great stuff, I think. If I had to pick out some favorites, I mean, Animal I've Become, On My Own, which I think is kind of underrated, Over and Over, Gone Forever, oh, and Time of Dying, of course. Definitely a great song. But yeah, Onex definitely has a lot of great stuff on this album, and it's basically an essential if you are a 3 Days Grace fan. So it's number 1 for me. Well, there you go, guys. That is my ranking for the 3 Days Grace albums. Feel free to let me know your ranking in the comment section below. So let me know what you think of my ranking. With that being said, thanks for watching. Have a nice day and take care.